Time for bed, Margaret, the woman said, walking into my living room at 7 p.m. I was watching the news. I said, "Who are you?" She smiled condescendingly. "I'm Ruth, your new caregiver. Your son hired me. I didn't need a caregiver. I was 74 and perfectly capable." Ruth started turning off my TV. "Come on now, let's get you ready for bed." It was 7 o'clock. I said, "I'm not going to bed." She took my arm. "Don't be difficult. Your son said you get confused at night." I pulled away. "I'm not confused. I don't know you and I didn't hire you." Ruth pulled out her phone, called someone. Yes, she's being resistant, aggressive behavior. She was talking about me like I wasn't there. My son arrived 20 minutes later. "Mom, Ruth is here to help you," I said. "I don't need help." He said, "Yes, you do. You called me 5 times last week." I'd called twice, about normal things. He continued, "Ruth is moving into the guest room. She'll be here full time." I looked at them both. This was a takeover. They were institutionalizing me in my own home. I said, "Both of you get out." My son said, "We're not leaving." I called 911. Told them strangers were in my home refusing to leave. Ruth said, "I'm her caregiver." I said to the dispatcher, "I never hired a caregiver. They are trespassing." Police removed them both. I changed my locks that night. My son tried to have me declared incompetent. I got a lawyer. Psychiatric evaluation, cognitive tests, passed everything perfectly. Judge dismissed his petition and warned him about elder abuse. Ruth lost her nursing license for participating in an unlawful confinement scheme. Before we continue, this fictionalized case study is based on documented cases of guardianship fraud, where family members attempt to establish control over competent elderly adults for financial gain. According to the National Center on Elder Abuse, guardianship fraud affects an estimated 1.5 million older Americans, with family members being the perpetrators in approximately 60% of cases. This examines your rights to refuse unwanted care, how to recognize attempted guardianship takeovers, and how to prove your competency when falsely accused. Now let me tell you my story. It was a Tuesday evening, just after 7 o'clock, and I was settled in my living room watching the evening news. This was my routine: dinner at 6, news at 7, reading later. A predictable, comfortable life I'd built for myself after my husband passed away 8 years ago. I'm Margaret Collins, 74 years old, retired librarian. I live alone in my house in Philadelphia, the house my husband and I bought 40 years ago. I was perfectly content watching a report about local politics when I heard my front door open. I'd made a mistake, left it unlocked after bringing in the mail, a habit I was usually better about. A woman I'd never seen before walked into my living room. "Time for bed, Margaret," she said brightly, like she was talking to a child. I stared at her. "Who are you?" She smiled. That condescending smile people use when they think you're not quite all there. "I'm Ruth, your new caregiver. Your son David hired me to help you." "I don't have a caregiver. I don't need one." Ruth walked over to my television and started turning it off. "Come on now, let's get you ready for bed." "It's bedtime." I looked at the clock on the wall. "It's 7 o'clock. I'm not going to bed." She reached for my arm with a firm grip. "Don't be difficult, Margaret. Your son told me you get confused at night. That's why I'm here." I pulled my arm away sharply. "I'm not confused. I don't know you, I didn't hire you, and I want you out of my house. Now." Ruth pulled out her phone and made a call. "Yes, this is Ruth. I'm with Margaret Collins." She was looking right at me as she spoke. She's being resistant, showing aggressive behavior. She was talking about me like I was a problem to be managed, like I wasn't standing right there. "I'm calling the police," I said. "You're confused, dear. Let me call your son. He'll explain everything." But I knew exactly what this was. This was an ambush. 20 minutes later, my son David walked through the door. He let himself in with the key I'd given him years ago for emergencies. I was beginning to regret that decision. "Mom, what's going on? Ruth says you're being difficult." "David, I don't know this woman. I didn't hire a caregiver." "Tell her to leave." "Mom, Ruth is here to help you. I hired her." "I don't need help. I'm perfectly fine." David shook his head, that same condescending expression Ruth had worn. "No, you're not. You've been declining, Mom. You called me 5 times last week." I thought back. I'd called him twice. Once with a question about my taxes, something perfectly reasonable. Once to ask if he was still coming for Sunday dinner. I called you twice, David, about normal things. You're forgetting, you're getting confused. That's why Ruth is here. Ruth stood there with her hands clasped, nodding sympathetically like she was witnessing a sad situation. David continued, Ruth is going to move into the guest room. She'll be here full time to make sure you're safe. My blood ran cold. Move in. Full time? Mom, you need help. You can't manage alone anymore. I can and I am managing. I've lived in this house for 40 years. I manage my own finances, my own healthcare, my own life. I don't need a stranger living here. We're not asking your permission, Mom. This is for your own good. I looked at them both, my son and this woman I'd never met. They were planning to take over my house, take over my life, institutionalize me in my own home, and they were treating me like I had no say in the matter. Both of you need to leave. Now, David's voice hardened. We're not leaving. This is happening whether you like it or not. I walked to my phone. Ruth tried to step in front of me. Margaret, let's not make a scene. Let's just talk about this. Don't touch me. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There are 2 people in my home refusing to leave. I need them removed. Ruth spoke loudly enough for the dispatcher to hear. I'm her caregiver. She's confused. I kept my voice calm and clear. I never hired a caregiver. I don't know this woman. She and my son walked into my house without my permission and are refusing to leave. This is trespassing. Ma'am, are you in danger? I'm being held against my will in my own home. They're trying to force me to go to bed at 7 p.m. They're treating me like I'm incompetent when I'm perfectly lucid and competent. David tried to grab the phone. Mom, hang up. You're making this worse. I pulled away from him. Don't touch me, that's assault. Back to the dispatcher. My son is trying to take the phone from me. Please send police immediately. Officers are on the way, ma'am. Stay on the line with me. David and Ruth exchanged worried looks. This wasn't going according to their plan. Within 5 minutes, I heard sirens. 2 police officers arrived at my door, a young black woman and a Latino man in his 40s. David immediately launched into his version. Officers, my mother is confused. She has dementia. I hired a caregiver for her safety, and she's refusing the help she needs. The female officer, her name tag said Jenkins, looked at me. Ma'am, can you tell us what happened? I kept my voice calm and clear. I was watching the evening news at 7 p.m. This woman, I pointed to Ruth, walked into my house without my permission and tried to force me to go to bed. When I refused, she called my son. They're both refusing to leave my home. Do you know this woman? No. I've never seen her before tonight. Did you hire her as a caregiver? Absolutely not. I don't need a caregiver. I'm 74 years old, I'm in perfect health, and I live independently. I manage my own home, my own finances, and my own affairs. Officer Jenkins turned to Ruth. Ma'am, do you have any documentation that you were hired by Mrs. Collins? Her son hired me. I have a contract with him, but not with Mrs. Collins? Well, no, but she's not competent to. Officer Jenkins cut her off. Do you have any legal documentation establishing that Mrs. Collins is incompetent? A guardianship order? A power of attorney? Ruth looked at David nervously. David stepped forward. We're working on that. My mother needs care. She can't make these decisions anymore. The male officer, Martinez, spoke up. So you don't have legal authority to make decisions for your mother? She's my mother. Being someone's child doesn't give you legal authority over them unless they've been declared incompetent by a court. Has your mother been declared incompetent? Silence. Officer Jenkins looked at me. Mrs. Collins, do you want these people in your home? No, I want them to leave immediately. Then they need to leave. This is your home, and you have the right to refuse entry to anyone, including family members. Ruth protested, but I was hired to provide care. By someone who has no legal authority to hire a caregiver for Mrs. Collins against her will, Officer Jenkins said firmly. You need to leave now. David tried one more time. Mom, please, can we just talk about this? Leave, David. Now, I'm your son, and this is my house. Leave. The officers escorted them both toward the door. As they were leaving, Officer Jenkins stayed behind for a moment. Mrs. Collins, I strongly recommend you change your locks tonight. Does your son have a key? Yes. For emergencies, change the locks. Also, you should know, what they attempted tonight could be considered attempted unlawful confinement. If you want to press charges, you have that right. I'll think about it. Thank you, officer. You're welcome. You did the right thing calling us. After they left, I sat in my living room in complete silence. My own son had tried to take over my house, put a stranger in charge of me, treat me like I was incompetent when I was perfectly fine. I looked around my living room. The house I'd lived in for 40 years, the life I'd built for myself, and David had tried to take it all away. I picked up my phone and called a 24-hour locksmith. By midnight, my locks were changed. I also did a thorough check of my house, my financial documents, all in my safe, secure. My medical records, in my file cabinet, nothing unusual. My bank statements, all normal, but I was worried. This couldn't be just about care. David had a plan, a bigger plan, and I needed to figure out what it was before he made his next move. Over the next few days, I thought back carefully about David's behavior over the past few months. I'd missed the signs, but now, looking back, I saw the pattern clearly. 3 months ago, David had started visiting more often. Just checking on you, Mom. Making sure you're okay. He'd started asking pointed questions. Did you take your medication today? I'm on blood pressure medication, 1 pill a day. I've never forgotten it in 5 years. Did you remember your doctor's appointment? I have a calendar system. I've never missed an appointment. 2 months ago, David had started telling other family members I was declining. My sister Rose had called me, concerned. David says you're having memory problems. Is everything okay? I'm fine, Rose. I don't know what he's talking about. He seemed really worried. Said you were forgetting things. I dismissed it at the time. Now I saw it differently. 1 month ago, David had asked me to sign a power of attorney. Mom, just in case something happens to you, it's standard estate planning. I already have everything set up with my attorney, David. I don't need to change anything. He'd gotten angry. Don't you trust me? It's not about trust. I have my affairs in order. I don't need a power of attorney. He'd left upset that day. 2 weeks ago, he'd brought up care facilities. Mom, have you thought about moving somewhere with more support? You're getting older. It might be safer. I live in my own house, David. I'm not moving to a facility. Just think about it, for the future. Now I saw what he'd been doing. Building a narrative, planting seeds with family members, creating a false story of decline so he could take control. But why? I decided to do some research. I searched David's name online, found his law firm's website, saw recent news articles. Major downtown law firm announces restructuring and layoffs. David's firm was mentioned. I called my friend Patricia, whose daughter worked in the legal field. Patricia, can you ask around about David's firm? I need to know what's really going on. She called me back the next day. Margaret, I asked my daughter to check. David's firm has been struggling. They had significant layoffs about 3 months ago. Was David laid off? No, but his salary was cut by 40%. And according to my daughter's contacts, he's got serious debt problems. I thought about David's lifestyle. He lived in an expensive suburb. His 2 kids were in private school, probably $30,000 a year per child. He had a country club membership. His wife Simone drove a Mercedes. He drove a BMW. And now his salary had been cut by 40%. I started thinking about my own assets. My house paid off, worth about $400,000. My retirement accounts, $300,000. Life insurance, $200,000. Savings, $100,000. Over $1 million in total assets. And suddenly, David's behavior made perfect sense. If he got guardianship over me, he could control everything. Sell my house, access my retirement accounts, make financial decisions in my best interest, which really meant in his interest. The Caregiver Ruth was step 1. Establish that I needed 24-hour care. That I couldn't manage on my own. Then he'd petition for guardianship. Claim I was incompetent, unable to care for myself, and with control of my assets, he could fund his lifestyle, pay for his kids' schools, keep his country club membership, pay off his debts, all at my expense. This wasn't about care. This was guardianship fraud. 1 week after the incident with Ruth, I received papers in the mail, legal documents. David had filed a petition for guardianship. I read through it, my hands shaking with anger. The petition claimed, Margaret Collins, age 74, is suffering from progressive dementia and is unable to care for herself safely. She exhibits paranoid behavior, refusing necessary medical care. She is a danger to herself and requires a guardian to manage her personal affairs and her estate. Every word was a lie. I wasn't suffering from dementia. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't a danger to myself. But David was making these claims in court documents. I immediately called my attorney, James Morrison. James was 65, a black man who specialized in elder law. I'd worked with him years ago on estate planning. James, my son is trying to have me declared incompetent. Tell me everything, Margaret. I explained the entire situation. The caregiver ambush, the police, now this guardianship petition. James was quiet for a moment. Then, Margaret, this is attempted guardianship fraud. We need to fight this aggressively. What do I need to do? First, we get you evaluated by a geriatric psychiatrist. Comprehensive cognitive testing. We need medical documentation proving you're completely competent. I am completely competent. I know you are, but we need to prove it to the court. Second, we document everything about David's behavior, the caregiver incident, his financial problems, his pattern of building a false case. Third, we prepare for court. How long do we have? The hearing is scheduled in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prove I wasn't incompetent. 3 weeks to save my freedom. James filed our response to David's petition. We denied every allegation, requested a full competency evaluation by an independent expert, and we made our own accusation that David was attempting financial exploitation through fraudulent guardianship. A week later, I met with Dr. Helen Washington. Dr. Washington was a black woman in her late 50s, a geriatric psychiatrist who specialized in competency evaluations. The evaluation took 3 hours. She started with basic orientation questions. Mrs. Collins, what is today's date? Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. Who is the current president? I answered correctly. Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens? 100, 93, 86, 79, 72, 65. I continued flawlessly. She gave me memory tests. 3 words to remember, then conversation, then recall. Apple, table, penny. 20 minutes later, what were the 3 words I asked you to remember? Apple, table, penny. She gave me problem-solving scenarios. If you left your house at 2 p.m. and had a doctor's appointment at 3 p.m. that was 30 minutes away, when should you leave? 2:30 p.m. What would you do if you smelled gas in your house? Leave immediately. Call the gas company from outside. Don't use anything that could create a spark. She reviewed my daily functioning in detail. Tell me about how you manage your finances. I pay my bills on time every month. I balance my checkbook. I monitor my accounts online. I file my taxes every year with help from an accountant. Your medications? 1 blood pressure pill every morning with breakfast. I use a pill organizer and I've never missed a dose. Your home maintenance? I clean regularly. I hire people for repairs I can't do myself. I maintain the property. Everything is in good order. Social activities? I'm in a book club that meets weekly. I go to church every Sunday. I have regular lunches with friends. I volunteer at the library once a week. After 3 hours, Dr. Washington looked at me with a slight smile. Mrs. Collins, I'm going to be very clear in my report to the court. You are fully competent. Your cognitive function is excellent, actually above average for your age. Your memory, reasoning, and executive function are all intact. You manage your daily life independently and capably. There is absolutely no basis for guardianship. I felt tears of relief start to form. Thank you. Mrs. Collins, what your son attempted is deeply concerning. I'll note that in my report as well. 3 weeks after receiving the guardianship petition, I sat in a courtroom. The judge was Maria Rivera, a Latina woman in her 50s with a reputation for being tough on elder abuse cases. David sat across the aisle with his attorney, a young man who looked uncomfortable with his client. David's attorney presented their case first. Your Honor, Margaret Collins is 74 years old and showing clear signs of dementia. She's unable to care for herself safely. She refused necessary medical care. Specifically, she refused a qualified caregiver who was hired to ensure her safety. She called the police on her own son who was trying to help her. This paranoid behavior indicates she's a danger to herself. We're requesting full guardianship so that Mr. Collins can make medical and financial decisions in his mother's best interest. Then David took the stand. Mr. Collins, can you explain why you believe your mother needs a guardian? My mother isn't herself anymore. She's forgetting things. She called me 5 times in 1 week, confused and disoriented. James, my attorney, stood for cross-examination. Mr. Collins, how many times did your mother actually call you that week? I don't remember exactly. You said 5 times in your petition. Was it 5 times? It was. Several times. Your mother's phone records, which we've submitted to the court, show she called you exactly twice that week. Once to ask about her taxes. Once to confirm Sunday dinner plans. Were those confused calls? David said nothing. Mr. Collins, when you hired Ruth Anderson to be your mother's caregiver, did you have any medical documentation that your mother was incompetent? No. But I could see she was declining. Did you have power of attorney for your mother? No. Did you have any legal authority to hire a caregiver for your mother without her consent? I was trying to help her. Did you tell Miss Anderson to move into your mother's home full-time? Yes, because my mother needs supervision. Without your mother's consent, without any legal authority to do so? David had no good answer. James then presented Dr. Washington's evaluation to the judge. Judge Rivera read it carefully. I watched her face. She looked up at me. Mrs. Collins, would you like to address the court? I stood. Your Honor, I'm 74 years old. I live independently in my own home. I manage my own finances, my own healthcare, and my own daily life. I don't need or want a caregiver. When a stranger walked into my house at 7 p.m. and tried to force me to go to bed like I was a child, I rightfully refused. When that stranger and my son refused to leave my home, I called the police. That's not paranoid behavior. That's self-protection. I understand my son thinks I need help, but I don't, and I have the right to make that decision for myself. Judge Rivera took a moment to review all the evidence in front of her. Dr. Washington's evaluation showing I was fully competent. My testimony, clear, rational, coherent. David's claims, unsubstantiated and contradicted by evidence. The phone records showing David had lied about how many times I'd called him. The police report from the night Ruth showed up, supporting my version of events. Finally, Judge Rivera spoke. I've reviewed all the evidence carefully. Dr. Washington's evaluation is unequivocal. Mrs. Collins is fully competent with excellent cognitive function. Her memory, reasoning, and daily functioning are all intact. Mr. Collins, your claims are not supported by any evidence. You stated your mother called you 5 times in 1 week, confused. The phone records show she called you twice, about completely normal topics. That's not confusion. That's normal family contact. Mrs. Collins rightfully refused an unwanted caregiver in her home. She rightfully called police when that caregiver, and you refused to leave. That's not paranoid behavior. That's appropriate boundary setting and self-protection. This petition is denied. Mrs. Collins retains full autonomy over her person and her property. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but Judge Rivera wasn't done. Furthermore, I'm deeply concerned about what appears to be attempted guardianship fraud. David's face went pale. Mr. Collins, attempting to establish guardianship over a competent adult for financial gain is elder abuse. You hired a caregiver without your mother's consent or any legal authority to do so. You attempted to confine her in her own home. You filed a guardianship petition making false claims about her mental capacity. I'm referring this case to Adult Protective Services for investigation. I'm also issuing an order prohibiting you from filing another guardianship petition regarding your mother without substantial new medical evidence from at least 2 independent physicians. Your Honor, I was just trying to help my mother. Mr. Collins, if you were truly concerned about your mother's welfare, you would have respected her autonomy and her clear statements that she didn't need or want help. Instead, you attempted to take away her freedom. That's not help. That's exploitation. Judge Rivera signed the order dismissing David's petition. I walked out of that courtroom completely vindicated. A few weeks later, I learned that Ruth Anderson was facing consequences of her own. James had filed a complaint with the Pennsylvania Board of Nursing. Ruth had participated in an attempted unlawful confinement. She'd entered my home without my consent. She'd attempted to force bedtime on a competent adult. She'd falsely represented my mental capacity. She'd planned to move into my home without my permission. The Board of Nursing held a hearing. The evidence was presented: the police report, the court ruling, Ruth's own statements to the officers. The board found that Ruth had violated multiple professional standards, practicing without proper patient consent, participating in a potential exploitation scheme, misrepresenting a patient's capacity, engaging in unprofessional conduct. Their decision: Ruth's nursing license was revoked. She could no longer work as a nurse in Pennsylvania. Ruth tried to appeal. I was just following the son's instructions. He told me his mother was incompetent. The board's response was clear: you're a licensed professional. You're responsible for independently assessing whether a person needs care and has consented to that care. You failed to do either. You entered a competent woman's home without her consent and attempted to force care on her. That's unacceptable. When James told me about the board's decision, I felt satisfied. Ruth would never do this to another elderly person. She'd participated in an attempt to take away my freedom, and she'd paid the price. 1 year passed. I was 75 years old, and I was living completely independently, still in my house, still managing all my own affairs, still active, engaged, and sharp. David tried to contact me several times after the hearing. I didn't answer his calls. He sent a letter apologizing. "Mom, I made a terrible mistake. I was worried about you, and I handled it badly. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. His wife Simone called once. "Margaret, David is so sorry. He was trying to help you." "Can't you forgive him?" "Simone, your husband tried to take away my freedom so he could steal my assets. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. Tell him not to contact me again." I updated my will. David was completely excluded. Everything would go to my sister Rose and to several charities I cared about. The will included explicit language. My son David Collins is excluded from any inheritance due to his attempt to fraudulently establish guardianship over me in 2024 for the purpose of gaining control of my assets. I also updated all my other legal documents. Healthcare proxy. My sister Rose, not David. Power of attorney. My attorney James Morrison, to be activated only if I became truly incapacitated and only with confirmation from 2 independent physicians. Advance directives, very specific about my wishes, with explicit instructions that David was not to be involved in any medical decisions. My friend Patricia came over for coffee one afternoon. "Do you think David has learned anything from this?" she asked. "He learned that I won't be a victim." Whether he's learned to be a better person, I don't know, and I don't care. "Do you miss him?" I thought about it honestly. I miss the son I thought I had, the one who loved me for me, not for my assets, but that son doesn't exist. David showed me who he really is. I believe him. 2 years after the attempted takeover, I was 76 years old and living my best life. I'd started volunteering at the local senior center, teaching a class called Protecting Your Rights as You Age. I shared my story, with James's permission and advice, to help other seniors recognize and prevent similar situations. The room was always packed. "If someone tries to force a caregiver on you that you didn't hire," I told the group, "that's attempted confinement. You have the right to refuse. If family members start calling you confused or incompetent when you're not, they're building a false case. Document everything. Get it in writing. If someone files for guardianship, fight it. Get a competency evaluation. Prove your capacity. Don't let them take away your freedom without a fight. Competent adults have the right to refuse care, the right to live independently, the right to make our own decisions. Age doesn't equal incompetence." One woman raised her hand. My daughter keeps telling me I need to move to assisted living. She says I can't manage on my own anymore, but I'm managing fine. Are you managing your home? Paying your bills? Taking care of yourself? Yes, all of it. Then you have the right to stay in your home. Don't let anyone pressure you into giving up your independence if you don't want to and don't need to. After the class, several people thanked me. You gave me the courage to stand up to my son, who's been pushing for power of attorney. You showed me I have rights. I thought I had to do what my adult children said. You saved me from making a terrible mistake. I was about to sign over my house to my daughter. Helping these people made everything I'd gone through worthwhile. That evening, I drove home to my house, the same house David had tried to take. The same independence I'd fought for. I was thriving, 76 years old, sharp, healthy, free. I made myself dinner, then settled into my living room at 7 p.m. The news was on. Just like that night 2 years ago when Ruth had walked in, but now my doors were locked. My rights were protected. My autonomy was secure. Nobody controlled me but me. I thought about everything I'd learned. 3 critical lessons emerged from my experience, lessons that could help other seniors facing similar threats to their autonomy. First, I learned to recognize the warning signs of an attempted guardianship takeover. David didn't just suddenly file for guardianship. He built toward it over months. 3 months before the caregiver incident, he started visiting more often, asking pointed questions designed to establish confusion that didn't exist. Did you take your medication? Did you remember your appointment? Questions with the assumption I was forgetting things. 2 months before, he started telling family members I was declining, spreading a false narrative to people who would eventually be witnesses to my supposed incompetence. 1 month before, he asked for power of attorney just in case, trying to get legal authority over me before attempting guardianship. 2 weeks before, he suggested care facilities, planting the idea that I couldn't live independently. According to elder law experts, these are classic warning signs of guardianship fraud, family members repeatedly claiming you're confused when you're not. If someone keeps saying you're forgetting things or getting confused, but you know you're fine, they may be building a false case. Asking repeatedly for power of attorney or access to your accounts. One request might be reasonable. Multiple pressuring requests are suspicious. Telling other family members you're declining without your knowledge. They're recruiting witnesses for their eventual guardianship petition. Pushing for unwanted care or suggesting you can't live independently. They're establishing a need for intervention, documenting normal behaviors as evidence of decline. David claimed calling him twice in a week was confusion. It wasn't, but he was creating a paper trail. Exaggerating or inventing incidents. David claimed I called him 5 times when I'd called twice. He was building his case with lies. If you see these patterns, protect yourself immediately, document everything. Write down every conversation, every false claim, every attempt to pressure you. Tell trusted friends and family members that you're competent. Give them the truth before false narratives spread. Get a competency evaluation proactively. Prove you're competent before anyone claims otherwise. Update your legal documents. Make sure your power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and advance directives name people you trust, not the person pressuring you. Consult an elder law attorney. Get advice before a guardianship petition is filed. Second, I learned my absolute right to refuse unwanted care and to have anyone removed from my home. When Ruth walked into my house, I was shocked and confused. But I knew one thing clearly. I hadn't hired her, I didn't want her there, and I had the right to make her leave. When the police arrived, Officer Jenkins confirmed what I instinctively knew. Competent adults cannot be forced to accept care they don't want. Even if your family thinks you need help, if you're competent, you have the right to refuse. Your home is your castle. You can refuse entry to anyone, including family members, regardless of their intentions. Being someone's parent doesn't give them legal authority over you. David kept saying, "She's my mother," as if that gave him rights. It didn't. Adult children have no legal authority over competent parents. Without a guardianship order or power of attorney, no one can make decisions for you. Ruth had a contract with David, not with me. That meant nothing legally. You can call police to remove unwanted people from your home, even family. This isn't mean or crazy. It's protecting your boundaries. Attempted forced care can constitute unlawful confinement. What Ruth and David attempted was actually criminal, trying to confine me in my own home against my will. The police understood this immediately. They didn't treat me like a confused old woman. They treated me like a competent adult whose rights were being violated. If someone tries to force unwanted care on you, state clearly that you don't want the care and didn't request it. If they won't leave, call 911. Explain that people are in your home without your permission and refuse to leave. Don't let them dismiss your concerns as confusion. Speak clearly and calmly to police. Change your locks immediately if family members have keys. Consider a restraining order if they continue to harass you. Document the incident thoroughly. You don't need to explain or justify your decision. No is a complete sentence. Third, I learned how to prove competency and fight fraudulent guardianship petitions. When David filed for guardianship, he was betting I wouldn't fight back, that I'd be intimidated by the legal system, that I'd give up. He was wrong. Here's what I learned about fighting guardianship fraud: get evaluated immediately. Dr. Washington's comprehensive evaluation was my strongest defense. The report clearly stated I was fully competent with excellent cognitive function. Hire an elder law attorney. James knew exactly how to fight guardianship fraud. Don't try to represent yourself in these cases. Document your daily competence. I showed the court that I managed finances, medications, home maintenance, and social activities independently. Expose the petitioner's motives. James proved David had financial problems and stood to gain over $1 million by controlling my assets. Prove false statements in the petition. Phone records showed David lied about how many times I'd called him. This destroyed his credibility. Show the pattern of manipulation. We documented David's months of building a false case, which proved this wasn't genuine concern but deliberate fraud. Request restrictions on future petitions. Judge Rivera's order prohibiting David from filing again without substantial medical evidence protects me going forward. The evaluation process tests several areas: orientation date, time, current events, memory, short-term and long-term recall, executive function, problem-solving, planning, reasoning, daily functioning, managing finances, medications, home, transportation. If you're competent, and most seniors being targeted are, you'll pass easily. The evaluation proves you don't need a guardian. Dr. Washington told me something important. The people who file fraudulent guardianship petitions are counting on you being too scared or confused to fight back. But if you're truly competent, the evidence will prove it. She was right. For comprehensive resources on guardianship fraud, elder rights, competency evaluations, and finding elder law attorneys, see the information below. Choose autonomy over giving in. Choose fighting back over accepting false accusations. Choose protecting your rights over making family comfortable. Because I'm standing here today at 76 years old, living independently in my own home, managing my own life, only because I refused to let my son take away my freedom. A stranger walked into my house at 7 p.m. and tried to force me to bed. My son had hired her without my consent to establish that I needed 24-hour care. They planned to institutionalize me in my own home, then petition for guardianship to control my $1 million estate. I called 911. Police removed them both. My son filed for guardianship claiming I was incompetent. I got evaluated, passed everything perfectly. The psychiatrist's report said my cognitive function was excellent. The judge dismissed the petition and referred my son to Adult Protective Services for attempted elder abuse. The caregiver lost her nursing license for participating in an unlawful confinement scheme. That was 2 years ago. I'm 76, living independently, sharp as ever, managing my own life. Because competence doesn't expire with age, and nobody, not even your own children, gets to take your freedom just because they want your money. I'm Margaret Collins, I'm 76 years old, and I'm living proof that you can fight back and win. Thank you for listening. If this helps even one person recognize attempted guardianship fraud and fight for their rights, then sharing my story was worth every difficult moment.